Bills. In 2023, the Buffalo Bills were riding high as one of the AFC's most talented teams, but behind the scenes, their front office was imploding. The controversy centered around two senior-level executives, Ron Raccuia, Executive Vice President and COO, and Jeff Littman, the team's CFO. Both were abruptly dismissed by ownership, and it wasn't initially clear why. But as details leaked, reports revealed that the two men were involved in an inappropriate romantic relationship with the same woman during a team trip to London. The scandal quickly escalated. The relationship allegedly crossed professional lines, creating a toxic work environment that violated team policies. Ownership, led by Terry and Kim Pegula, acted swiftly once internal investigations uncovered the extent of the misconduct. The dismissals created a ripple effect across the Bills organization. These weren't minor staffers. Raccuia had been heavily involved in the planning of the new stadium, and Littman had been part of the team's financial leadership for decades. Their exits forced a mid-season leadership shuffle in one of the league's most stable franchises, Dolphins. In 2013, the Miami Dolphins were at the center of one of the most disturbing scandals in recent NFL history, a case of workplace bullying that exposed a toxic culture inside the locker room. The controversy revolved around veteran offensive lineman Richie Incognito and second-year tackle Jonathan Martin. Martin suddenly left the team mid-season, citing emotional distress. Soon after, a series of text messages and voicemails surfaced, and they were damning. Incognito had allegedly targeted Martin with racial slurs, threats, and relentless verbal abuse. One voicemail included Incognito calling Martin a racial epithet and threatening to kill him. What followed was an NFL-led investigation that concluded the Dolphins' locker room was deeply dysfunctional, with multiple players engaging in harassment, and coaches reportedly encouraging Incognito to toughen up Martin. The fallout was immediate. Incognito was suspended, and Martin was eventually traded. Head coach Joe Philbin and GM Jeff Ireland faced intense criticism for allowing the environment to fester. The scandal led the NFL to implement new workplace conduct standards and prompted teams across the league to reevaluate locker room culture. Patriots. The New England Patriots are one of the most successful franchises in NFL history, but also one of the most controversial. And that reputation largely stems from two major scandals: Spygate in 2007 and Deflategate in 2015. Spygate was the first blow. In 2007, the Patriots were caught videotaping the New York Jets' defensive signals from an unauthorized location during a game. While filming opponents wasn't illegal on its own, doing it from the sideline violated league rules. Head coach Bill Belichick was fined $500,000. The largest ever for a coach, and the team lost a first-round draft pick. The NFL destroyed the tapes, leading to criticism about transparency and fueling conspiracy theories about how far the Patriots' surveillance went. 8 years later, Deflategate reignited the fire. During the 2014 AFC Championship game, the Patriots were accused of using underinflated footballs, which can be easier to grip and throw, against the Indianapolis Colts. The NFL's investigation concluded that Tom Brady was generally aware of a scheme to deflate the balls. He was suspended for 4 games, and the team was fined $1 million and lost 2 draft picks. Both scandals left a permanent stain on the franchise's legacy in the eyes of many fans. Critics labeled them cheaters, while defenders argued they were being targeted for their dominance. By the way, I'm going to be posting a lot here, so it would mean a lot if you subscribed and dropped a like for the algorithm. Jets. In 2008, the New York Jets made headlines when they signed legendary quarterback Brett Favre. But what was supposed to be a new chapter for the franchise quickly turned into a public relations nightmare. That same year, Favre was accused of sending inappropriate text messages and explicit photos to Jen Sturger, a former New York Jets game day host. The messages allegedly dated back to his brief time with the team. The NFL launched an investigation, and the story dominated sports media for weeks. While Favre admitted to leaving voicemails, he denied sending any explicit images. The league ultimately fined him $50,000, not for the content of the messages, but for failing to cooperate fully with the investigation. The scandal raised uncomfortable questions about workplace harassment in professional sports. It also put a spotlight on the culture inside NFL organizations, where team employees, especially women, often faced difficult environments. The Jets' front office came under scrutiny for how they handled Sturger's complaint and whether they did enough to protect their employees. Ravens. In 2014, the Baltimore Ravens became the center of one of the most damaging controversies in NFL history, the Ray Rice elevator incident. During that offseason, surveillance footage surfaced showing running back Ray Rice dragging his then-fiancée out of an Atlantic City elevator, unconscious. The implication was clear. Something violent had happened behind those doors. At first, the NFL suspended Rice for just 2 games, a decision that sparked immediate backlash from the public and media. Critics called the punishment far too lenient for an act of domestic violence, but the outrage only intensified when TMZ released the full elevator video months later, showing Rice punching his fiancée in the face and knocking her out cold. The public reaction was swift and unforgiving. The Ravens terminated Rice's contract the same day the full video went public, and the NFL increased his suspension to indefinite. But by then, the damage had been done. The league was accused of trying to cover up the severity of the incident or failing to obtain the video when it was readily available. The fallout forced the NFL to completely overhaul its personal conduct policy and take domestic violence far more seriously. Commissioner Roger Goodell admitted that the league had got it wrong and announced stricter penalties for future incidents. Steelers. In the late 2000s, the Pittsburgh Steelers found themselves in the middle of a public relations crisis involving their franchise quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger. In March 2010, Roethlisberger was accused of sexual assault by a 20-year-old college student in a Georgia nightclub. It was the second such allegation against him in under a year, following a civil suit filed in Nevada in 2009. Though criminal charges were never filed, the details of the investigation sparked widespread media coverage and concern about Roethlisberger's behavior. The NFL suspended him for 6 games, later reduced to 4, for violating the league's personal conduct policy, despite no legal conviction. The backlash was swift. Roethlisberger's reputation took a major hit, with fans, media, and sponsors questioning his character. Steelers ownership made it clear they were unhappy, and there were even internal discussions about moving on from him entirely. Over time, Roethlisberger returned to the field and rebuilt his image, eventually leading the Steelers to several more playoff runs. But the controversy remains a stain on both his career and the team's legacy during that era. Bengals. In the mid-2000s, the Cincinnati Bengals were at the center of a storm of off-field issues that earned them a troubling reputation. Between 2005 and 2007, more than a dozen Bengals players were arrested on various charges, ranging from DUIs and drug possession to assault and weapons violations. The 2006 season was particularly chaotic. That year alone, 8 different players were arrested, including wide receiver Chris Henry, who was booked multiple times and suspended by the league. Linebacker Odell Thurman missed a drug test and was later arrested for drunk driving. Defensive end Frosty Rucker was charged with spousal battery. The list kept growing, and the headlines started to overshadow what the team was doing on the field. The league took notice, and so did the public. Commentators began to mock the Bengals as a jailhouse team, and critics blamed head coach Marvin Lewis and ownership for prioritizing talent over character. While the Bengals managed to field competitive teams during that stretch, the run-ins with the law painted the franchise as undisciplined and out of control. Eventually, the team adjusted its approach to scouting and player development, placing greater emphasis on personal conduct. Browns. In 2009, Cleveland Browns wide receiver Dante Stallworth became the focus of national headlines after a tragic and avoidable incident in Miami. Stallworth was driving under the influence when he struck and killed a pedestrian, 59-year-old construction worker Mario Reyes, who was crossing the street after work. Stallworth's blood alcohol level was well above the legal limit, and he was immediately arrested and charged with DUI manslaughter. He eventually reached a plea deal that included 30 days in jail, 2 years of house arrest, and a lengthy probation. The light sentence sparked widespread backlash and reignited debates over how athletes are treated in the legal system. The NFL suspended Stallworth for the entire 2009 season, but the league also received criticism for not issuing a harsher punishment. For the Browns, the incident added to a long history of turmoil during a decade already filled with poor performances and front office dysfunction. Colts. In 2019, the Indianapolis Colts were blindsided just weeks before the regular season when franchise quarterback Andrew Luck announced his retirement at just 29 years old. The news broke during a preseason game, and fans inside Lucas Oil Stadium began booing as reports circulated in real time. Luck, a four-time Pro Bowler and former first overall pick, had battled a relentless series of injuries: shoulder, kidney, ribs, ankle, that led to multiple surgeries and rehab cycles. He cited the endless pain and the toll it took on his mental health as reasons for stepping away from football. The Colts had built their entire roster around him, and his sudden departure sent the team scrambling. The emotional reaction from fans who had once seen Luck as the next Peyton Manning revealed the uncomfortable tension between fan loyalty and player well-being. Over time, many came to understand and support his decision, but the timing and nature of the retirement made it one of the most shocking exits in league history. Jaguars. In 2021, the Jacksonville Jaguars hired college football legend Urban Meyer to lead a rebuild around rookie quarterback Trevor Lawrence. What followed was one of the shortest and most chaotic head coaching tenures in NFL history. Meyer's tenure was plagued with controversy from the start. He hired strength coach Chris Doyle, who had been accused of racist behavior at Iowa, then quickly had to reverse the decision. During the season, Meyer stayed in Ohio after a Thursday night loss instead of flying back with the team, and was filmed at a bar getting close with a woman who was not his wife, sparking national backlash. Reports emerged of players and coaches losing respect for him. He allegedly belittled assistant coaches, got into a heated incident with wide receiver Marvin Jones, and even kicked kicker Josh Lambo during warm-ups. By December, he was fired after just 13 games. Titans. Before the 1999 season, a bizarre accusation shook up the rivalry between the Tennessee Titans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguars head coach Tom Coughlin publicly alleged that someone from the Titans had obtained a copy of Jacksonville's playbook before the season even started. The alleged theft came from Greg Williams, Tennessee's defensive coordinator at the time, who had formerly worked with the Jaguars. According to the accusation, the Titans used inside knowledge of Jacksonville's schemes to gain a competitive edge. The NFL investigated, but never publicly confirmed wrongdoing. However, the Titans beat the Jaguars 3 times that season, including in the AFC Championship, preventing Jacksonville from reaching its first Super Bowl. The situation never fully faded. Years later, players and coaches from that Jaguars team still cited the incident as a lingering source of bitterness. Texans. The Deshaun Watson controversy engulfed the Houston Texans franchise from 2020 to 2022. What began as a standoff between the star quarterback and the front office over personnel decisions quickly spiraled into one of the most high-profile off-field sagas in NFL history. In early 2021, Watson requested a trade. Shortly after, more than 20 women filed lawsuits accusing him of inappropriate conduct during massage sessions. The allegations triggered both civil litigation and a criminal investigation. Watson denied all wrongdoing, and while grand juries declined to indict him criminally, the NFL suspended him for 11 games for violating the league's personal conduct policy. The Texans, meanwhile, were pulled into the legal chaos. In 2022, the team reached settlements with 30 women who had planned to sue the franchise for enabling Watson's behavior by providing hotel rooms and massage tables. Ownership was widely criticized for prioritizing silence over accountability, with many seeing the organization as complicit in shielding their star player. Eventually, Houston traded Watson to the Cleveland Browns for a historic haul of draft picks, but the damage to the Texans' image lingered. Chiefs. In December 2012, the Kansas City Chiefs were shaken by an unthinkable tragedy involving linebacker Jovan Belcher. On the morning of December 1st, Belcher shot and killed his girlfriend, Cassandra Perkins, at their home. He then drove to the team's facility at Arrowhead Stadium, where he spoke briefly with head coach Romeo Crennel and general manager Scott Pioli before taking his own life in the parking lot. The incident stunned the NFL community. Belcher had no public history of violence or instability, and teammates described him as quiet and focused. The Chiefs were forced to play a scheduled game the very next day against the Carolina Panthers, winning 27-21 under a cloud of grief and disbelief. The tragedy reignited national discussions about mental health, head trauma, and the NFL's responsibility to its players. An autopsy later revealed that Belcher had signs of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a degenerative brain disease linked to repeated concussions. His story became part of the broader examination into how the league handles brain injuries and the long-term well-being of its athletes. Raiders. In 2021, the Las Vegas Raiders found themselves at the center of a national controversy when head coach John Gruden was forced to resign after the release of a trove of offensive emails. The messages, uncovered during an unrelated NFL investigation into workplace misconduct within the Washington football team, included racist, misogynistic, and anti-LGBTQ language spanning nearly a decade of correspondence. Gruden had signed a 10-year, $100 million contract just a few years earlier, intended to be the face of the franchise's rebirth in Las Vegas. But once the emails were published by the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, his position became untenable. In the span of a week, the Raiders went from playoff hopefuls to a team without a head coach, with interim Rich Bisaccia stepping in mid-season. The fallout extended beyond just Gruden. The situation intensified scrutiny on the NFL's transparency, especially since only a handful of emails from a larger investigation were made public. Players and fans questioned whether the league selectively released information to force Gruden's ouster while protecting others. Broncos. In 2010, the Denver Broncos were caught in a controversy that felt like a direct sequel to the infamous Spygate incident. Then head coach Josh McDaniels, a former Patriots assistant, was fined $50,000 after it was revealed that one of his staffers, Steve Scarnecchia, had illegally videotaped a San Francisco 49ers walkthrough practice in London. The practice was held the day before the two teams were scheduled to play at Wembley Stadium. Scarnecchia, the team's director of video operations and also a former Patriots employee, filmed the walkthrough without McDaniels' knowledge, according to the NFL's investigation. But McDaniels failed to report the incident to league officials when he found out, which triggered the punishment. The NFL made it clear that the failure to report was a serious violation, regardless of whether the footage was ever used. The timing of the scandal couldn't have been worse. McDaniels was already under pressure due to the team's poor performance and questionable personnel decisions, including trading away stars like Jay Cutler and Brandon Marshall. The videotaping incident became the final straw. Less than 2 weeks after the news broke, McDaniels was fired. Chargers. The San Diego Chargers' move to Los Angeles in 2017 was a public relations disaster. For decades, the Chargers were deeply rooted in San Diego. The fans were loyal, the team had history, and the city had repeatedly supported them through ups and downs. But behind the scenes, tensions were growing between the franchise and local government. Owner Dean Spanos had been pushing for a new stadium to replace the aging Qualcomm Stadium. He proposed multiple plans, including one partially funded by taxpayers. Each proposal failed at the ballot box or stalled in negotiations. By 2016, it became clear the city and the team weren't going to reach a deal. That's when Spanos made the controversial decision to activate the team's option to relocate to Los Angeles and share the Rams' planned stadium in Inglewood. It shocked the San Diego fan base. They felt blindsided, betrayed, and discarded. For a while, the Chargers didn't even have a real fan presence in their new home. Games at the temporary StubHub Center often looked like away matchups, filled with fans of visiting teams. Rams. In 2016, the St. Louis Rams officially relocated back to Los Angeles, but the process behind that move led to one of the biggest legal and financial controversies in NFL history. Owner Stan Kroenke had promised to work with the city of St. Louis on a new stadium project to keep the team in Missouri. However, while those negotiations were underway, Kroenke secretly purchased land in Inglewood, California, and developed plans for what would become SoFi Stadium. The city of St. Louis felt blindsided. They had invested time and money into trying to keep the team, even proposing a publicly supported $1.1 billion stadium project on the riverfront. Despite those efforts, Kroenke and the NFL approved the move to Los Angeles, citing financial benefits and market size. St. Louis sued the NFL and the Rams, accusing them of fraud, breach of contract, and deception in the relocation process. The league fought the lawsuit for years, but eventually settled in 2021. The total payment, $790 million. It was one of the largest legal settlements the league has ever faced, and it exposed the internal politics and backroom dealings that often shape major NFL decisions. Cardinals. In 2018, Arizona Cardinals general manager Steve Keim was arrested for extreme DUI after being pulled over just days before the 4th of July. He registered a blood alcohol content over 0.15, which under Arizona law carries mandatory penalties, including jail time. Keim publicly apologized and was suspended for 5 weeks and fined $200,000 by the team. But the controversy didn't end there. During his suspension, the Cardinals reportedly used burner phones to keep in contact with Keim, a direct violation of the NFL's disciplinary policy. The team never publicly confirmed or denied the burner phone allegations, but the reports raised serious questions about internal accountability and whether the organization respected the terms of its own punishment. Falcons. In 2007, Michael Vick, the star quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons and one of the most electrifying athletes in football, was indicted on federal charges related to a dogfighting operation. The investigation revealed that Vick had financed and participated in Bad News Kennels, a brutal dogfighting ring based out of Virginia. The details were horrifying. Dogs were trained to fight, abused, and in many cases killed if they didn't perform. The indictment painted a disturbing picture of organized cruelty, and the backlash was immediate. Vick was suspended indefinitely by the NFL, and the Falcons were left in crisis. He eventually pleaded guilty to federal felony charges and was sentenced to 23 months in prison. The Falcons voided his $130 million contract and absorbed a massive salary cap hit. They were forced to start over without their franchise quarterback, who had once been the face of not just the team, but of Atlanta sports entirely. The scandal raised questions about character, accountability, and the culture surrounding professional athletes. The NFL reevaluated how it handled off-the-field conduct, and animal rights advocates used the moment to push for tougher laws against animal cruelty. Panthers. In 2017, Carolina Panthers owner Jerry Richardson came under intense scrutiny following a bombshell report by Sports Illustrated detailing multiple accusations of workplace misconduct. The allegations included sexual harassment and the use of racial slurs directed at team employees. It was also revealed that the organization had paid out confidential settlements to keep the complaints quiet, raising serious concerns about a culture of silence within the franchise. The NFL launched an official investigation into Richardson's behavior, which uncovered enough damning evidence that he stepped down as team owner before the inquiry was even completed. Amid mounting pressure, Richardson announced he would sell the team at the end of the season. That announcement came on the same day the league took over the investigation, signaling how serious the matter had become. David Tepper, a billionaire hedge fund manager and former minority owner of the Steelers, eventually purchased the Panthers for $2.275 billion, then a record sale price for an NFL franchise. Richardson's statue, once proudly displayed outside Bank of America Stadium, was quietly removed a few years later under the guise of public safety during national protests, but many saw it as a final reckoning. 49ers. In the late 1990s, the San Francisco 49ers were rocked by a federal investigation into team owner Eddie DeBartolo Jr. and his ties to political corruption. DeBartolo, who had led the 49ers during their dominant Super Bowl run in the 1980s and early 1990s, found himself at the center of a bribery scandal involving former Louisiana Governor Edwin Edwards. The case revolved around a riverboat casino license. DeBartolo admitted in federal court that he had paid Edwards $400,000 in cash in exchange for exclusive rights to the casino operation. He was indicted in 1998 and eventually pleaded guilty to failing to report a felony. While he avoided jail time, he was fined $1 million and placed on 2 years of probation. He also agreed to step down from his role with the 49ers. The fallout was seismic for the franchise. DeBartolo handed control of the team to his sister, Denise York, and her husband, John York, ushering in a new era of leadership that initially struggled to maintain the 49ers championship standard. Fans and players were stunned. DeBartolo had been widely respected as a hands-on owner who treated players like family and built one of the most successful dynasties in NFL history, Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks' most infamous controversy came not off the field, but at the 1-yard line of the biggest stage in sports, Super Bowl 49. With less than a minute remaining, trailing the New England Patriots 28-24, the Seahawks had the ball on 2nd and goal from the 1-yard line. Marshawn Lynch, one of the most powerful running backs in the league, stood in the backfield. Everyone expected a handoff. Instead, quarterback Russell Wilson dropped back and threw a slant. Patriots rookie Malcolm Butler jumped the route and intercepted the pass, sealing the win for New England and denying the Seahawks a second straight Super Bowl title. The decision instantly became one of the most debated play calls in NFL history. Fans, analysts, and even Seahawks players questioned why the team passed the ball instead of handing it to Lynch. The moment not only cost Seattle a championship, it fractured the locker room. Over the years, several players voiced their frustration. Rumors spread that internal rifts developed between the offense and defense, and that trust in the coaching staff was never fully repaired. Some even speculated that the decision was made to make Wilson the hero instead of Lynch, which only fueled tensions. The aftermath lingered for seasons. Key players from the legendary Legion of Boom defense eventually departed, and the team never returned to the same level of dominance. Cowboys. In 2015, a bombshell incident occurred behind closed doors at AT&T Stadium that would remain largely hidden from the public for years. Richard Dalrymple, the Dallas Cowboys' longtime senior vice president of public relations, was accused of using his security credentials to enter the cheerleaders' locker room while they were changing. According to the allegations, he positioned himself behind a partial wall and secretly watched the women undress. 4 cheerleaders, all members of the squad at the time, reported the incident to team officials. Rather than escalate the matter publicly or involve the league, the Cowboys conducted what they described as an internal investigation. Months later, the team quietly reached a $2.4 million settlement with the cheerleaders, which included non-disclosure agreements that prevented them from discussing the incident. Despite the seriousness of the accusation, Dalrymple remained in his role for another 7 years. But that wasn't the only accusation. During the 2015 NFL Draft, a fan alleged that Dalrymple was caught using his phone to take inappropriate photos of Jerry Jones's daughter, Charlotte Jones Anderson, while she was seated in front of him. Although the team denied any wrongdoing, and Dalrymple claimed the allegations were false, the fan had raised concerns with league officials. Dalrymple abruptly retired in 2022, just weeks before ESPN broke the story. The timing fueled even more speculation. The Cowboys' handling of the matter was sharply criticized. Critics accused the team of prioritizing reputation over accountability and burying a serious issue beneath layers of legal protection. Giants. Few franchises in NFL history have been as storied as the New York Giants, but even their legacy includes shadows. Among the darkest chapters was the prolonged off-field controversy surrounding Hall of Fame linebacker Lawrence Taylor. Widely regarded as one of the most dominant defensive players in football history, Taylor's brilliance on the field was rivaled by a chaotic and troubling personal life. Throughout the 1980s and early 1990s, Taylor was repeatedly involved in drug-related incidents. He admitted to using cocaine during his career, including before games, and failed multiple NFL drug tests. In 1988, he was suspended for 30 days for substance abuse violations. Despite the disciplinary action, the league's response at the time was criticized for being too lenient given his star status. Fans and analysts debated whether the NFL turned a blind eye to protect one of its biggest names. But the issues didn't stop after his playing days. In retirement, Taylor faced several legal issues, including a 2010 arrest on charges related to an incident involving a minor. Though he ultimately pleaded guilty to lesser charges and avoided jail time, the case further complicated his public image and legacy. Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles' most public and polarizing controversy in recent memory centered around wide receiver Riley Cooper. In 2013, during a country music concert, Cooper was caught on camera using a racial slur in a heated outburst. The video quickly went viral, igniting backlash from fans, media, and players across the league. For a franchise with a diverse locker room and passionate fan base, the incident was both embarrassing and divisive. Internally, the Eagles faced a crisis. Many of Cooper's black teammates expressed anger and disappointment, and there was concern the locker room dynamic had been irreparably damaged. The organization fined Cooper and excused him from team activities temporarily, but they did not release him. Instead, they brought him back later that season and even signed him to a contract extension in 2014. That decision was heavily criticized. To many, it felt like performance had been prioritized over accountability. The fact that Cooper's best statistical season came immediately after the incident only fueled the controversy further. While the team tried to present a united front, the episode left a lingering discomfort within the organization and its fan base. Lions. The biggest controversy in Detroit Lions history dates back to 1963 and involved one of the NFL's earliest major gambling scandals. The scandal centered around two prominent Lions players at the time, defensive tackle Alex Karras and Packers running back Paul Hornung, both of whom were accused of betting on NFL games, including ones involving their own teams. Karras was not just a starter. He was one of the most dominant defensive linemen in the league and a cornerstone of the Lions franchise. But during the league's investigation, it was revealed that he had repeatedly placed bets on NFL games, even while serving as a team captain. The league considered this a direct threat to the integrity of the game. Commissioner Pete Rozelle handed down harsh penalties to send a message. Both Karras and Hornung were suspended for the entire 1963 season, at a time when gambling and sports were not as intertwined as they are today. This was an unprecedented move. The Lions also fined several other players and were forced to reckon with the stain on their locker room. While Karras eventually returned and continued his career, and even later transitioned into a successful Hollywood career, his legacy was tainted for decades. He wasn't inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame until 2020, nearly 8 years after his death, in part because of the scandal. Commanders. The most defining controversy in Washington. Commanders' history wasn't a single scandal. It was a culture of dysfunction and misconduct that spanned over 2 decades under owner Dan Snyder. From the moment Snyder purchased the team in 1999, the franchise was plagued by front office chaos, on-field failure, and eventually serious legal scrutiny. What began with questionable football decisions, cycling through head coaches, overpaying aging free agents, and alienating fans, devolved into something far more serious in the 2010s. In 2020, the Washington Post published a series of investigative reports detailing a toxic workplace culture within the organization. Over 40 former employees came forward with allegations of sexual harassment, verbal abuse, and intimidation, many implicating senior executives close to Snyder. These revelations led to a league investigation, initially handled by attorney Beth Wilkinson. However, the NFL drew heavy criticism for not releasing a written report of her findings, instead opting for a vague summary and issuing a $10 million fine to the team. This lack of transparency only deepened public outrage and fueled suspicions of a cover-up to protect Snyder. Meanwhile, Snyder's own behavior was under increasing scrutiny. Additional allegations emerged accusing him personally of misconduct. Congressional committees began investigating the team for workplace issues and financial improprieties. As pressure mounted, sponsors pulled support, and fans, already disillusioned by decades of losing, turned away in large numbers. Finally, in 2023, after years of controversy, Snyder sold the franchise for over $6 billion. The Chicago Bears' most shocking controversy centered around wide receiver Sam Hurd and his arrest for drug trafficking in 2011. At the time, Hurd wasn't a star on the field. He was a role player with modest stats. But what made the story headline-grabbing was the magnitude of the charges and how it blindsided the league. Just months into his 3-year contract with the Bears, Hurd was arrested in a sting operation at a Chicago steakhouse. According to federal agents, he attempted to purchase large quantities of cocaine and marijuana to distribute across the country. He allegedly told undercover officers he was already distributing 4 kilograms of cocaine per week and needed a supplier to keep up with demand. He even reportedly asked if they could handle 1,000 pounds of marijuana and 5 to 10 kilograms of cocaine per week going forward. The scale of Hurd's ambition was what stunned everyone. This wasn't a personal use case or a one-time deal. Prosecutors claimed Hurd was trying to operate a nationwide drug ring while playing in the NFL. The league quickly distanced itself, and the Bears released him the day after his arrest. In court, things only got worse. Text messages, recorded meetings, and informant testimonies painted Hurd as deeply involved in organized drug trafficking. He eventually pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Packers. The biggest controversy in Green Bay Packers history dates back to 1921 and 1922, when the team was caught using ineligible players under false names. It may sound tame by today's standards, but at the time, it nearly got them kicked out of the league permanently. In 1921, the Packers joined what would become the NFL under founder Curly Lambeau, but they were a small market team with limited resources and struggled to compete against better-funded clubs. So, they bent the rules. Lambeau arranged for several college players to suit up under assumed identities, essentially forging names on the roster, so they could play professionally while keeping their college eligibility intact. The league discovered it and wasn't amused. The NFL immediately stripped Green Bay of its franchise rights. For a moment, it looked like the Packers would be just another failed early football experiment. But in 1922, the team reorganized under a new name, Green Bay Athletic Club, and paid a $50 re-entry fee to be reinstated. It worked. They were allowed back into the league, and they've been a cornerstone franchise ever since. Vikings. The biggest controversy in Minnesota Vikings history unfolded in 2005 and became infamously known as the Love Boat Scandal. On October 6th of that year, several Vikings players chartered 2 boats on the Lake Minnetonka for what was supposed to be a private party. But what happened on those boats turned into a full-blown national scandal. According to reports and later police investigation, the party involved hired escorts from out of state, public sexual acts, and behavior so outlandish that the boat's crew members had to cut the trip short and call law enforcement. Among the players identified in the incident were quarterback Dante Culpepper, cornerback Fred Smoot, offensive tackle Bryant McKinney, and running back Mo Williams. Some were later charged with indecent conduct, disorderly conduct, and lewdness. Smoot was even accused of organizing the event and faced heavy public scrutiny as a result. The backlash was immediate and intense. Then head coach Mike Tice struggled to keep control of the locker room, and the scandal cast a long shadow over the franchise. Several sponsors pulled back, the team's reputation took a major hit, and it accelerated the exit of owner Red McCombs and the eventual overhaul of team leadership. Saints. The biggest controversy in New Orleans Saints history is unquestionably the Bountygate scandal of 2012. A saga that rocked the NFL and changed the way the league approached player safety. The scandal centered around a bounty program run by defensive coordinator Greg Williams from 2009 to 2011. The program financially rewarded defensive players for injuring opponents and knocking them out of games. Hitting a quarterback so hard that he left the field, that could earn a player up to $1,500. The more damage, the higher the payout. The NFL launched an investigation and confirmed that not only did the bounty system exist, but that head coach Sean Payton and general manager Mickey Loomis were aware of it and failed to stop it. Even after initial warnings from the league, the Saints continued the program behind the scenes, further deepening the controversy. The punishment was historic. Head coach Sean Payton was suspended for the entire 2012 season, the first time in NFL history a coach received such a penalty. Greg Williams was suspended indefinitely, later reinstated. Loomis got an 8-game suspension, and assistant coach Joe Vitt received 6 games. The team was also fined $500,000 and lost 2 second-round draft picks. The scandal hit just as the Saints were still riding high from their 2009 Super Bowl win and damaged the franchise's reputation for years. Buccaneers. One of the most bizarre and public controversies in Tampa Bay. Buccaneers history came in 2022 when star wide receiver Antonio Brown stormed off the field mid-game, ripping off his jersey, throwing his gloves into the crowd, and running shirtless into the locker room while flashing peace signs to the fans. It all happened during a Week 17 game against the New York Jets, and it became an instant viral moment. The incident shocked the football world. Brown, who had a history of behavioral issues and off-field controversies, was already on thin ice in Tampa. Just weeks earlier, he had served a 3-game suspension for using a fake COVID-19 vaccination card. The team brought him back anyway, with head coach Bruce Arians saying he would only get one more chance. That chance unraveled on national television. According to Brown, he was dealing with an ankle injury and claimed the coaching staff tried to force him to play through it. The Buccaneers denied this version of events, saying Brown was cleared to play and never indicated he couldn't. What followed was a media circus, with Brown releasing private text messages, accusing the team of trying to cover up the situation, and even teasing a potential lawsuit. The fallout was swift. The Buccaneers cut Brown shortly after the game, ending a brief but chaotic tenure that had included a Super Bowl win in 2020. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here, so it would mean a lot if you subscribed. Thanks for watching.